So we're going to take a look into the world of Rafael Pavarotti. It's the most requested photographer on my TikTok channel. And so we're going to do this introduction video before we do a lighting breakdown. This video is kind of in two parts. It's got an overview of his work. I talk about some of the set designers, stylists that he's worked with, just look at his work in general. And then the second part looks at color theory. Came from a question on my TikTok, which is why his colors look so strong without being super saturated. I spent quite a lot of time making this video and researching it, and the more I looked at his pictures, the more I became really impressed with a huge team effort that goes into his work. The styling, the set design, the hair and makeup, the model casting. So let's jump into his world. The photographer, Rafael Pavarotti. We're going to take a look at his work and talk about some of the key characteristics. His advertising is like a slightly diluted version of his editorial work. You can still immediately tell it's his. He has an incredibly strong awareness of color, not just vivid color in his imagery, but where to put color within the frame. He uses a lot of block color and then creates points of contrast within the image, conflicting colors, or colors that sometimes work in harmony. He also fills the frame with a flat color so that super vivid contrast points come forward. The way he photographs people, and skin in particular, is less about texture and more about what the color brings to the image. There's a complete sense of harmony within his frame. He talks about having a meditation point with the team at the beginning of the shoot. The environment that he shoots in is really important to him. He's worked with some amazing stylists, Grace Coddington, Kate Phelan, Katie Grand, and it's clear huge amounts of preparation go into the shoots that he's making. Not just the set design, but the styling, the makeup. I don't feel there's one clear lighting style, but there's a couple of key themes. He has a really soft fill light, and he has a really focused light for the head. And he uses constant lighting somewhere within the image so that he can also create a sense of movement or motion blur. The way he portrays his models, to me, makes them seem godlike or mythical in some way. It's not so much about the model's own personality coming forward, but in the vision that he creates and portrays. Another thing I find interesting about his work is there's a timeless quality to it. He rarely uses any kind of props within the image that could date it to a particular decade even. He works with an amazing artist and set designer, Ibby Njoya, who started with a really maximalist color approach to the set work, but he's also able to achieve things by almost pulling the saturation out of the set and just dropping one or two key highlight colors into the imagery. Together they make worlds that seem really painterly, a world that doesn't exist outside of the frame. And you can really tell the confidence that the models have within him to portray them beautifully. There's so much work of his that you can go and look at for reference, where everything just comes together so beautifully. What is it about Rafael Pavarotti's use of color that works so well? He's really working with the ideas of color theory. And I've tried to break down his images in a way that we can really understand what he's doing. So taking the color of the flower here and dropped it onto the color of the jacket. And then in the image below, I've taken the gloves and dropped them onto the color of the background. And you can see how vivid the contrast of the two colors becomes. With this top image, we've got the color of the jacket against the color of the background. And the bottom image, the color of the gloves over the jacket. His placement of color also is really important. If we take the pink gloves away from an image and reduce them to blue, the whole image suddenly changes. It really loses a lot of its impact. When you isolate these colors out, you can see that he's really playing with the idea of simultaneous contrast. It's sort of an optical illusion. Your brain perceives there to be more contrast or more vividness to the two colors when they're next to each other. I really recommend this book by Johannes Itten. You can find it online as a PDF. But the thing that's really interesting to me is where he talks about color as they incite each other to maximum vividness. He talks about colors working in harmony and contrasting with each other. In the book, he breaks it down into exercises so you can understand what your brain is perceiving. On the 7-color contrast, for me, the most important one for Rafael Pavarotti's work is simultaneous contrast, which is the second from bottom here, and complementary contrast. And you only need small amounts of color to really create impact. And to look at complementary color, if we just cut the red out and flip it over to the other side, suddenly it seems to become the strongest thing in the page. And we can see this again and again in Pavarotti's work. The green becomes a little muted on the blue, but actually when we put it next to the flesh tone as well, everything sings again. Suddenly that green looks vivid. He also plays with the idea of what happens when you have a flat background. How does that change the intensity of the color on the foreground? So the two pinks are the same in this image, but your brain will perceive them differently depending on the background. Once you begin to see it in his work, you'll spot it everywhere, and how he's really playing with color contrast and making little color pops. Suddenly that flower becomes really, really bright, and just that hand placement really makes both of the colors sing. This is a perfect example of how much color you need to either balance or dominate within a frame. The actual amounts of yellow within this image are very small, but they seem really, really strong in the picture. If you were to shut your eyes and think about the picture, it's probably the most memorable part, is the small amounts of yellow. Again, if we take them away, the image just drops suddenly in its contrast level. And this is a great exercise to see how much color you need before it dominates the rest of the frame. In the last one, the yellow to me seems to be shouting, it's huge, it's taking over the frame, but it's still less than 50%. The second image, where it's a smaller circle of yellow, seems to get harmony. It seems to be balanced with where, if we take an image like this, the red and the blue tend to balance each other out. There's a little bit more harmony within the frame. If we take the red out of the flower, the picture suddenly becomes really different again, and it loses its sense of balance. If you go back through his imagery, you'll see he doesn't have to just ramp the saturation up. It's about careful color placement and understanding where colors sit on the color wheel, how your brain will perceive them. It's a real masterclass for me in color theory. So hopefully that was a good introduction. I think Rafael Pavarotti is an awesome photographer, and I will be doing a lighting breakdown, but hopefully now we understand some of the basics of his color theory, his placement within pictures, and so with that knowledge, we can then look a little bit more detailed at his lighting in the next video. And hopefully you'll add me on TikTok as well. I'll post a link in the caption, and it's in the profile. And thanks for watching.